Yeah, so we were actually trying to get you on a month and a half ago, but you ignored us because you were out in Davos.
Sorry, guys. Competition is fearsome. I would have given up Davos for you, but that was planned a bit far ahead in advance.
Were you just hobnobbing with the globalists over in Switzerland?
So no, actually, Davos is I would say a side effect of my involvement on the Global Agenda Council with the World Economic Forum, and that particular council is called data-driven development. So we practically deal with the data conundrum. So it's like, for a few years I've been working on that, and I met some amazing people and some amazing companies started from that kind of interaction. And so we have meetings. We have a meeting of the Global Agenda Council in the UAE every fall. And then there's Davos, and then there's the annual meeting of the champions, which is in China every year. And it's there that I put the blockchain among the top 10 emerging technologies. So I championed the blockchain at the World Economic Forum. Oh. And it was not easy to convince them, unfortunately, but after a few years, I succeeded that.
So how does one become a champion or an evangelist for any technology, let alone blockchain? Like, how did this begin?
Yeah, I hate to tell you that there is not a recipe, and probably every other champion would tell you that I have no idea how. You just go there and take your chances. I mean, what I did is all I can tell you, what I did and how it happened to me or for me. So I do not know how. People keep asking me. I don't know how I was nominated for this Global Agenda Council. I think it's because of my involvement, I'm also an academic, and I have a lot of publications, peer-reviewed, and I kept giving keynotes about decentralized systems along my career. I also had some successes out of my lab. I don't know if many people know that Garrett Camp, which is the co-founder of Uber, was one of my first master's students. And at the time, it was at the University of Calgary. So he is Canadian from Calgary. So, I kept mentoring, the sharing economy, distributed systems, stuff like this in my research lab. And I think after a certain time, you achieve a critical mass, and then you kind of are recognized as someone who knows what they're doing or what they're saying. And I believe that's why I was nominated on the Global Agenda Council, but that's not enough because many people are there and that they don't become champions. So everybody who is involved in a way or another as an expert with the World Economic Forum is involved in many of their activities. So I received an email once, I think it was in 2014, from the other council, which was on future and emerging technology. It was like a super council, which was an umbrella council for all the others. So I received an email. And usually, we don't open all those emails because there are too many of them. But that one I opened, and it was a call for nominations of new technologies for that particular year. And I made the nomination for blockchain. And it was such a battle because everybody was saying, no, Bitcoin, no, don't go there.
What year was this?
It's going to crash. This is going to, and I kept fighting and telling them, no, look, this is about something else. And, not to mention that on that council, there were only men. And it's like, I had to fight, I think, even more because I'm like, okay, the crazy lady who is now believing in some fantasy. Here we are. So still, it was successful. So blockchain was listed. So that's how you become, that's how I become a champion.
What year was that?
It was in 2015. The fight was in 2015.
Okay.
The email was received in 2014 because they're moving slow. In the meantime,
5 years later,
happened in blockchain, especially in those years. But and in 2016, it was actually. It was announced. Yeah, this list, top 10, was announced in Scientific American and at the World Economic Forum annual meetings of the new champions. And the new champion, one of them, was blockchain. And of course, I nominated it, so I was the champion. So that's maybe an answer to your question.
No, it's good. I love that you're honest about that, and there's no
There's no other way. I don't. That's why I'm in blockchain. And let me make a comment here about me being honest. One thing which I like about blockchain is that it is a provocation to human nature, because it's immutability and transparency. And of course, we can play with these attributes in a way or another. But in the end, it is a truth machine, and it reveals who we really are. If we are trying to do fraud, or now if we cannot anymore, it's like, oh, we're unhappy about it. So we don't like this technology.
Yeah, honesty is not inherently part of human nature. Or
exactly, no.
Say it's half and half, lying and honesty.
Exactly, but it can help us. It can help us, first of all, to look in the mirror and see, how do I feel about this? Am I really comfortable, to be honest? As well as maybe stir us in kind of nudge us. I think maybe it's better to be honest. So nudge us in the right direction.
But it requires us to admit our greatest weaknesses.
Absolutely. And that's why provocation to human nature. That's why I look at it this way. Yes.
Was that the thing that initially attracted you to blockchain? Like when you first?
I wish, of course, to say that, but it was a more organic process than this. I mean, yeah, of course, I am thinking about being a model, a role model as an academic, obviously with students and for the young people, and which I mentor. But with distributed systems, it was, it started with my PhD in Germany in robotics and dynamical systems. And then from there, discovering that centralized control systems, which are not only the control systems for society, but also for robots, believe it or not. And it's much simpler when you control robots. That, for example, for a manufacturing plant, to have a centralized control system is like an overhead, which, you cannot reconfigure and you cannot adapt if something happens down the line, or you get a new order which you have to fulfill quickly. So it was like a static monolith. So I started by decentralizing those systems, and then we created the Foundation for Intelligent Physical Agents. Like, it was all about these distributed robots. And they could operate in different parts of the world. Like in Japan, they were doing some parts. In Mexico, they were manufacturing, like brute force, more with the hand, if there was something more finesse. In Germany, they were assembling everything. And it was like coordination of these distributed systems. So we came up with a stack like for this coordination, and it was much more complex than what blockchain has today, because we didn't have those tricks. But we use state machines, and I don't want to go too deep into the technical aspect. But during that time, I became fascinated also with another aspect of it, and namely these societies in cyberspace, because those software capsules could coordinate robots, but they can also communicate and assemble people, like a social network, so you could do a lot of things, the Arab Spring, for example. So then I became very passionate about how can we use that to stir society in the right way, and eventually to, use such a software to rewrite the rules by which society plays, to embed different policies, and then you can simulate a new policy in before it is applied. So if the society in cyberspace, let's say all of them are negatively affected by a new rule, by a new policy, then you better don't apply it. And this is not done today, at least not enough.
Well, this is the basis of like all of economics, isn't it?
Exactly.
Running these simulations. I think as an economist myself, the question is always, How accurate can you build out a model like that?
And that is exactly that's the art, right?
Yeah.
So and can you anticipate the effect, and how do you set it? So of course, but it's not only economics. I mean, it's we played with it, for example, for grants. There are policies when you release grants for research, which definitely ensure that the researcher will not be successful, because actually they contradict each other. So I give you money for this, but I don't give you money for that, and so on. And then they cannot actually do the job. So policies conflict, or even worse. I mean, I don't know if, worse, equally bad, but I think with much more drastic implications is when this happens in emergency response, where many organizations have to come together, and the rules are set so that they cannot actually operate, and they cannot even interoperate and work with each other. So it's,
like, what's an example here?
An example is, so for example, the firefighters they are used to working as a team, while the police officers are used to the law enforcement mainly by themselves. So it all depends on who arrives first at the scene. If the police officers arrive, and then the firefighters arrive. If the police officer arrives first, he would say to the firefighters, "Take me to your leader. I need to talk to that. Who's in charge here?" And then they say, "Nobody's in charge. We are all a team." And vice versa. Yeah, if the firefighters arrive first and then the police officer comes, they would say, let's save someone. And then the police guys say, "Well, on whose authorization?" So they get stuck in the rules because they cannot function except within, this, it's called incident command system, which is very top down, and everybody has to respect those rules. So I had a project called Self-Organizing Security. Actually, it was enabling the SOS network that was decentralizing this incident command system. And that was applied to the Vancouver Olympics. There's the publications, and also the reports are on the... actually, it was a project in collaboration with the DRDC, the Defense Canada. So they are on their website. You can find them. But anyway, speaking of the rules, they can be rewritten better in many instances. It's not only about the economics. It's about the human interaction and the policies in our organizations. Governance, that's the topic.
Well, I think you're hitting on the right topic here for a crypto podcast. Whenever that's like the buzzword of the last 3 years kind of in Ethereum land here is just governance in general. True. That I think that's really been one of the big sort of benefits in a lot of ways that people have seen to these crypto systems, is that we've had almost rapid prototyping of different governance systems. What would, I guess, kind of now that you can like see all of these sort of, whether it's you have sort of explicit governance systems or, sort of Bitcoins, like we don't have a governance system, which is in and of itself a governance system. Like, do you see any errors that a lot of people are making? Or things that people are ignoring?
It is very experimental, and it's. I don't think it's for me to see errors. I think it's for all of us to decide what we want to do. So first of all, what is your system about? Which you are designing, and then look at the rules and see if the interactions are correct. So it's not, you cannot generalize when it's about governance. Bitcoin has its self-governance, which works very well for what it was created to do. So it's just a perfect system, flawless for that purpose.
Flawless for never changing.
Exactly.
It's perfect.
But if you have other purpose, then you have to adapt your governance system. So if you, for example, create a monetary, let's say a coin, which would be designed as the currency for a nation, then you have to consider completely different things than what Bitcoin considered when it was created. Yes. So it all depends. I'm not going to give you examples, but I'm working with a project like this, and probably soon I will be able to tell you more. So it's governance is important. We cannot generalize again. Yeah. So like the same with nature. There are different ways of governance, like birds, self-organizing swarms, and a swarm and the DAO, and the dream of the DAO, to have this totally autonomous organization. And that's why I was mentioning self-organizing security system, because actually you can design governance, but actually you cannot design adaptation. So you have just to learn how to set up the parameters so that the system can adapt in an optimal way for the particular task. And this is my passion. So this is to what I dedicated my research, so you can find those various applications from distributed manufacturing, self-organizing manufacturing system in which the orders are changed on the fly. Like, for example, now I got a bigger, a more urgent or manufacturing order. I have to change the plan for the whole plant and, redistribute work and so on. So all that, we can learn a lot from ant colonies, by the way, about that, and local communication. And then how does that translate into a plan that you can see from above? It's like with global effects, and they always find the optimal path to the food through those local interactions.
Well, this is probably right up your alley, because that's like the prediction with a lot of crypto companies, that eventually where you have all of these sort of voting individuals, we're sort of implementing these governance systems that we have in the real world on top of the blockchain. I know some people have sort of hypothesized that we're going to move towards more like AI controlling these pieces. Do you think that's something that we're going to see more of in the future?
I think so, and I think it is very good to do that, because
you laughed when we said voting.
It is no. I think it is exactly. You can hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is exactly the point in when you. So the rules have to be done in a way in which we. Sorry, can you repeat the question? Because there was an interruption at my end, and I hope I'm answering your question.
Sure. No, I was just saying that, right now, really the governance systems that are, not Bitcoin's explicit no governance, but, the ones built on top of Ethereum, for instance, it seems to be like we're going to put these democratic functions on top of the government, or, we're going to put everyone gets to vote and
so I think what you're talking about is what I was answering, which is embedding the rules in the infrastructure. And coming back to what I was saying about the societies in cyberspace and what Mike was saying, that can we actually influence or not such people and their human nature and who we are. And I believe that with those rules in the infrastructure, you can be prevented from doing something, just like how Bitcoin infrastructure is preventing you from tampering with transactions and with the records. Rules embedded in the right way in the infrastructure can nudge, that is the minimal, or can simply prevent something from happening. And this is really very important. It's like, of course, from an autonomous car crash to anything much less, crucial or drastic. So definitely, and me coming from the control engineering perspective of that, of course, we when it comes to robots and humans working together, there's a lot of rules that have to be in place in that mixed governance system, which is a socio-technical system. We call it socio-technical combinatorics, and that kind of of governance is called algorithmic governance, because actually it is embedded. In the end, the beauty of it, if you can get there, is that it can be embedded into a beautiful mathematic formula. And that's how self-organizing systems work. And they can work, as you say, seamlessly, flawlessly. So to this, I dedicated a lot of my research, and I'm very passionate about that. But I believe that, yes, we can write those rules. Depending how we write them, we can make life better or less good. So and I just want to refer to something which was a real life and is a real life experiment that is still existing, and this is Burning Man.
Oh.
I don't know if you know the story of Burning Man, but we wrote this book, From Bitcoin to Burning Man and Beyond. The quest for
You wrote that book?
When I say we, I wrote one chapter on that, which is of course called Organic Governance. So let me back up a bit. So the idea is that desert and cyberspace can be regarded both as sandboxes for experimentation with those kind of rules. So if we would be to start society all over again, how do we do it better? Because in fact, Burning Man was a reaction to, okay, it may have been the hippies, it may have been, the disgruntled individual, but anyway, it was a reaction that, what's going on in the world today is not for us, and we just want to create our new world there, let us be free. So they went to the desert, and actually Larry Harvey, I'm so sorry that he passed away. So I had the opportunity to meet him because of the book. So he went to the desert first with his colleague, and then when they saw that magnitude, and they said, I have to bring more people here. So he brought more people. And then after a certain number of people, they started to be human, as my discussion with Mike and the human nature starting to come up. And so there were some car accidents because they were driving like crazy there, and some people died. And then it emerged the need for some sort of law and order. So, so they created the rules, and the rules are translated into the so-called 10 principles of Burning Man. And believe it or not, the beauty of it is that I came up with the same principles through my simulations on organic governance with this socio-technical combinatorics. So I was doing the sandboxes in cyberspace. It was much easier for me. Only the agents, the software agents would die. It's like a video game, right? While for them, it was they learned it in real life. But we came up with the same principles. And those principles follow what I call the logic of holonic systems. But that is a completely different conversation, and I think we will not have time for that here.
Okay.
But anyway, the idea is, yes, this book, From Bitcoin to Burning Man and Beyond, talks a lot about governance, about socio-technical combinatorics, and about the algorithmic governance. And when I talk about socio-technical, I mean, it's not only manufacturing and robotics, but now with... obviously, yes, cell phones and so on, and the Internet of Things, and especially with renewable energy is a very simple example. That now, how do you control the energy? And you have people, is the temperature, is everything it can be, or ambient intelligence is a very good example of socio-technical combinatorics. If I enter the room and the sensors detect it's me, then I will have the right colors on the walls, or the painting projected there digitally on my TV, or a waterfall, or whatever I want. Sometimes even anticipating that, okay, now the sun sets and the lights will be on. So that's, again, yes, socio-technical combinatorics. How do we design those rules? When will the lights go on? And so on and so forth.
Sure. But, I think like talking like from Bitcoin to Burning Man, the big difference in my mind from Bitcoin and Burning Man and the real governance systems is like Burning Man is sort of set up to be this temporary structure, and then Bitcoin as well is, it's 10 years old now only. And then, you still have that base question that sort of looms over all governance pieces, and that like, do people actually know what they want? Like, do you have rational human beings, and can you sort of make a governance system if you assume that human beings aren't rational? Or at least,
it can adapt, right?
And I think it's even, a bit different than this, because we know a lot about human nature. The thing is, and this is my personal opinion, and I believe that we as human beings, we can be all there is. Yes, we can do good and bad. And it would help to have help in that regard. So it's like a system with permissions on my phone, yes, or on my child's phone. well, the child wants to go to certain sites which are not good for the child, right? So that doesn't mean I'm infringing the child's freedoms. It means I'm helping the child to, stay more on the path to, let's say, a good life and progress for them as an individual. So it is not as simple. Human can adapt of course humans can adapt, at least we can, because we survived so far evolution, yes. And now the question is how ethical it is to embed those rules in the system. Is it ethical to do that to the child or not? And who decides? So the battle is not as simple. Yeah, it's between free will. Yes, exactly. So that's where we eventually will get with
right. I mean, I always just sort of try and think into, the US government, if you sort of were going to embed those controls into a system, like, I guess that would have been the Constitution at the beginning.
Absolutely.
But then we sort of have a Supreme Court to rule over it because it's still not sort of concrete enough. And we don't know.
How this translates, this is for the US, but how it translates with, let's say, the crypto space and the companies and the startups is because they each have communities. And now you can incentivize communities in various ways because of blockchain and the fractional payments that we can do with tokens. So, for example, one example here is which could not have been solved without blockchain is how do you incentivize people, because with the data conundrum, right? How do you incentivize people to actually give you their data? How do you stay ethical and use people's data at the same time? So now you can, because you can have everyone have their own data, and then because of blockchain, yes, you can incentivize them. If you provide me with the data, you will get tokens with which you can buy a discount for your shoes. For example, if you choose to receive advertisements from a particular market. So it's a new economics and a new.
I mean, it was you that said it, or if I just read it while researching you, but the idea that our individual data is like the oil of the future.
Yes, I didn't. It's not me saying it. I mean, this is an old. I do not know who said it first. Nobody knows anymore. But that is data. Yeah, exactly. Data is the new oil, and yes, exactly. But the question is, it is the new oil, but how do you tap into it without actually infringing
on some ethics?
Exactly. Personal freedoms. Yes. So blockchain has the ability, if you apply it correctly, to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the point, because of this peer-to-peer connection, or in the case of advertisers, consumer to brand direct connection, and then the brand can incentivize me through a blockchain infrastructure, and then every community can have their own governance rules for data, for different things. So you do not need necessarily the magnitude of the US government. You do not need one blockchain and one set of rules for everyone. You can have your own communities, and people now these communities can quickly assemble and disassemble. And people can just get out of your community if you don't play it according to their wish, which I think is an amazing thing. It's also, of course, risky for businesses because they would lose their customers, but it's also an incentive for them to do better to keep their customers, and as well gives people the freedom. Yes,
sure. So we'll let you weigh in on our debate that we've been having on our podcast. So we had Kurt Wallace on originally, and he was a former guy who used to run community currencies here in the U.S. And then we had on Tori Adams, who she's more of the blockchain globalist, and she feels that Bitcoin will eventually just be the one world currency that sort of backs everything and will enable open global trade. And there are really two separate viewpoints as far as, do you think there are going to be the multi-crypto view as far as there's going to be a lot of localized project-based currencies, or do you think we're going to move towards more of a system where you have
and again, in my opinion, it is more complex than this, even than this, if you allow me, because it's different different ways to use Bitcoin and different way to actually design other currencies. So Bitcoin, I do not look at it as a currency. Again, my view is that it's a store of value, and that's that's
the tagline now, right?
Will actually give it its true value, and it's happening. It will happen even more. So I personally do not believe that the value of Bitcoin would be because I can buy Starbucks coffee with it. No, I know there are projects which are building currencies which are, I don't want to say better or worse, but which are much more useful in buying Starbucks coffee or doing other things because of how they are designed, because of how fast they are, because many other attributes we can do, and with time it will become even better. So I am all for diversity and a wide range of implementations. There can be stable currencies, there stable coins. There can be the national currencies designed in a certain way with certain attributes for each nation. For example, in which you can embed a certain percentage to secure a universal basic income is returned to the people who are actually creating the value in that country. Something which no governance system so far managed to implement, except in those societies which we are actually flawed because they are more too socialistic or too even worse. So now
I would like to. I can argue.
Yes.
The point. So
Go ahead.
couldn't you say that the U.S. dollar sort of had, fiat currency in and of itself is sort of a community currency managed by a governance system? To sum it up really simply, similar to like crypto, just due to the fact that we haven't gone with the UBI, it doesn't mean, couldn't we all agree to do that on the US dollar? Or do you think it would be better if we sort of split off on our own?
Why do you say that currency which can be printed at any time by a bank or by a central system, how is that a community currency? Who decides how many you print, and who knows actually in the end how many are printed?
I'm not saying it's a well-governed or well-designed community currency, but you could say it is sort of...
It's not a community currency, my friend. And I recommend the book by Bernard Lietaer. I don't want to be too
no, please,
parochial here, but I'm the professor now. So the book, The Future of Money by Bernard Lietaer, who is also, the co-author of one of the chapters in our book, From Bitcoin to Burning Man and Beyond. Bernard, unfortunately, he died on February 4 this year. But the book remains about the future of money. And you will understand the answer to your question very well in that book. And I also recommend it to the listeners, of course. So then you will, and then we should have a conversation. So we, at least agree that the US dollar is definitely not a community currency. So anyway, I will leave it here because I want you to read the book. I'm not going to give you the easy pill because then you may forget.
I might forget to read. I have to go read the book. Okay.
You may forget that you took the pill, and you may forget what I tell you. So yes, we go through the learning process.
Well, sure, but that's, it's always, to me, in my mind, whenever you talk about, say, the difference between, say, you have these more cryptocurrency communities versus, say, a physical community like a country, they can... that there are differences, but like in the crypto world, for instance, it's sort of anybody can come, anybody can go, and that sort of seems to be the big difference in my mind.
Yeah, we have to determine how we define community, but also yes, and when we say in general cryptocurrencies, yes, how are they designed? Who is issuing them, and are they going to be issued infinitely or indefinitely, just like the US dollar? Now I'm going to bring some more to help, because we have problems in our economy. So
or can only certain people that are citizens receive them?
Exactly, and that's what I was talking about. The thing is that's what I was talking about. If we would design a national currency using blockchain, how do we make the rules better? And there are answers. There are economists. One is actually, he's not an economist. He's also an engineer, Bernard Lietaer. But there are others like Milton Friedman, who, I don't know if you read him, but he also proposed some very, very good models for money and how to redesign the economies.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted he wanted what, the constant inflation rate.
Exactly.
And then he was also a proponent of what, the negative income tax, which was sort of an early UBI.
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly.
Yeah, I mean, but that's always, the sort of, to play the centralized economist here.
Oh man, we are enemies. It's clear. Okay.
I'm just pretending.
Okay. I'm pretending too.
The pushback would be, I guess, that it's sort of not flexible enough, because whenever you have to encode things in, then you sort of lose the ability to flexibly adapt to new circumstances.
But flexibility and stability again, yes. So what do you want? Do you want stability or flexibility? I would want stability.
Sure.
So you see, so it's always a give and take. The truth may be in the middle, but let's say I want stability. You may, being younger, I want flexibility. I can take more risks or whatever, So yeah, we're not going to solve.
I mean, it's really,
we stay enemies for now.
Yeah, I mean, so we're developing our own governance systems for our project, and it's really tough, because sort of the more sort of decentralized and stable you want the project to be, by almost definition, that means the less upgradable it is.
Yes, all I can agree with, not knowing anything about it, is that yes, it is tough. And if you would have told me, it's easy for us and so on, I would have said, they must have problems with their project. So this is good. It's good. No, it is. It's not an easy matter, but there is a lot of work done in this area by others. So we may be able to look at those and see. That is another conversation.
It's good that it's hard, because it's making us. Excuse me.
Yeah, no,
I was just going to say, it's good that it's hard, because that's forcing us down a path where we have to ask tough questions, and we have to be very considerate about the implications of everything. Which, if it was so easy, you would just slap something on and launch it.
That's exactly why I said yes. Exactly, you made my argument. And so I just said, if they said it's difficult, it means they are thinking deeply about it. Otherwise, it wouldn't make it difficult.
Thank you.
I always like to, we can go back, there was the block size debate in Bitcoin, sort of governance failure or governance success, depending on which side of the argument you would fall on. But, either way, it was sort of a giant sort of rift in the community that led to a permanent split. Was that sort of designed, do you think, from the beginning of Bitcoin, that this was how it was going to be? Was it a flaw in their design from the beginning, or was that a pro in their design from the beginning?
I don't look at such amazing breakthroughs through those lenses. Let's put it this way. Yes, to me, the simple fact that Bitcoin appeared, and the infrastructure, it works so beautifully. It's such an amazing qualitative jump. And because, you just took it, here it is. But I was involved in consortia that were struggling to deploy a decentralized infrastructure. And it was so difficult. I know how hard it was. We worked at state machines, IEC 1499, we created standards, but still it wasn't perfect. And then here it is, such a beautiful solution. So I look at it from that genius perspective. I mean, it's like, wow, if I would have had that during my years where I was designing decentralized distributed systems, my life would have been so much easier. So, and then all the rest are details. And then, of course, we can improve and so on. But the mindset of the world was already shifted. Now we have an example of how to do it better. So this, therefore, all the rest, whatever you are concerned about, there are details, and I won't judge if it was a failure, or obviously it was not a failure because it's working. But is it working better than how I can do the next steps, the next iterations. No, but it inspires those, obviously. It was the first step, and it was amazing. It is still. I love it. I love Bitcoin, no matter what anyone would say.
No, definitely. I think we can like loop back now. Whenever you were talking to all of your friends over at Davos, you're obviously pushing the blockchain piece. How do they feel when you push the Bitcoin piece as well?
I don't have the feeling that I'm pushing anything, because now after, it was admitted in the top 10, it pushed itself. So it's, I'm actually riding the wave. That's all I can say. And my last article, because the wave is practically taking the world in this new direction. So after Davos this year, I wrote a little piece which I entitled "Bye Bye World Economic Forum, Welcome Blockchain Economic Forum." so I just saw how society is getting more and more decentralized and how this is enabled. Because the World Economic Forum, especially the Davos meeting, we had even a panel on loneliness. But you have to understand how it works, Davos. Davos is indeed a meeting of the elites, right? And everybody arrives to talk about climate change, but they arrive on their private helicopter, and there's a mess of cars that you cannot practically drive, but everybody is still in their car, stuck there on the promenade. And it's like, so much, it looks like a big hypocritical party in the end. Yeah, so deep pockets guy come to party and do deals and so on and so forth. And there are then some others who are outside. There is a fenced area, and there are those who are outside the fence. Protesting. And they are more, some are protesting, but some others just set up shops, hoping they're gonna grab someone maybe stuck in the car, like a prime minister, and so on. Oh, please come to our to our pavilion. And many of them manage to do that, and they have very interesting panels with them because they are generous. They want to help others as well. So there are also this on the outside, but also with the idea of marketing their products and so on and so forth. And then there are the utopians who want to make the world better. And that's, as you say, the Bitcoin believers, the cryptos, and so on and so forth. So, and those... they had their own, right now, their own party called Blockchain Economic Forum, in which many economists also who don't believe in blockchain were invited. So there were some very interesting debates. If you read that article on my LinkedIn, I think you will enjoy it. But this is what is happening. So it's not that I'm preaching or so. I just go to those because you attract what you are, right? So I go, and most of the time I'm invited in those groups of like-minded people. So we just plan we just plan the future and plot it. So I think you will understand even more if you read my article.
Okay, I will definitely. We'll try and link it in the show notes. We can link your article.
That would be a good idea. Yes.
For everyone. This is
Yes. Now that you mentioned, I will send you links also for the book of Bernard Lietaer, so everybody can have them there and click.
Yes.
I tried to write it down, and I realized I do not know how to spell Lietaer.
Exactly.
So I just wrote Bernard L.
People may be driving when they listen to it, so we will put the link there. No worries.
Yeah. Sure. And I think we can begin to wrap up, but are there any,
Yes.
I know you're familiar with you're in about 1 billion different projects at the moment. Any other ones that you want to sort of mention or talk about your works?
No, I'm fine right now. I mean, everything, all the projects which I can speak about are on my LinkedIn. They are listed there, and I have articles about them there. So I think everybody can find those things. I'm also fascinated, like if I may say something in my last word, I'm fascinated by what Daxia is doing. I want to commend you for not only your idea, your brilliance, really. It's amazing that you're doing this work. From the beginning, when I heard of it, I was smitten, and I know that you will be successful. And I want this to be my last words because people will leave to see that I was correct.
Okay, she's a local DC person for anyone watching this.
And this is also my good luck to you. Like in between the line, I'm sure you imply that, yes, because I want to be right in my premonition here.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This was a blast. We'll be sure whenever you can talk about your super secretive projects, we'll have to have you back on and you can divulge all of
I will knock on your door as soon as I can speak about
all right.
it. And wait.
And I'm going to read this book and we're going to have a debate on monetary policy at some point.
I would love to moderate that debate.
I'm going to buy my boxing gloves right now.
Yeah, there you go. Then I'll be the referee.
Okay.
And I do want to say, you said you're riding the wave, and if that's the case, you're definitely a surfer, and you're not somebody that's being like overwhelmed or ignoring it. You're definitely somebody that is on top of that edge and really like you enjoy being on that wave. Your passion is palpable.
It energizes me. Absolutely.
For sure.
Why would we do it? Why would we be in this space otherwise? It's natural progression to me. Yep. But for me, it's because also of this organic way in which I got into decentralized systems, and I got to know really deeply, to the cells or to the bone, if you want, that decentralization is much better than centralization in most cases. So
couldn't agree more.
Well, there it is, mic drop.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll just end it there.
Thank you so much.